on with the sports world with we'll start with Jason.
Yeah, so it's I'm a big basketball fan, and it is playoff time right now, and I'm a Laker fan, and the Lakers are in the playoffs. There's two things going on right now. So we've got the COVID mess to where they're playing in this bubble in Florida. So I think that kind of screwed things up for me. I literally have not watched. I don't think I've watched almost any basketball since the COVID thing, right? Like I went to a game pre-COVID, but since COVID, I've not watched any basketball. So part of it is COVID related. But yes, LeBron James comes out with his comments and stuff, and it does turn me off. I think a few years ago somebody made a comment and said, just shut up and dribble, and that was very, very controversial. And I joke about it, but I do kind of feel like I do kind of agree with that in a sense. Like I want to watch basketball. Now, that's not to say that these guys can't have opinions and that they shouldn't use what platform that they have in terms of their social media followings and stuff like that. I mean, that is all fine. I mean, we all have a right to be able to use what influence we have to make a difference in the world. So I'm not suggesting that he shouldn't do that. But by the same token, I also can feel how I feel, and if he wants to make his comments and disrupt the playoffs by going on strike, I can be upset about that and choose to not watch it and not participate. So yes, it does bother me, but I mean, I think he's okay. I mean, they can all make their stand, but I can too.
But you have literally not watched. Let's go back to the COVID thing. What was it about that made you stop watching it because of that? Was it just
they quit playing?
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, they quit playing for months, and then I haven't watched the game, so I literally have not watched the game. My buddy was telling me that it's, in my mind, I think it's going to be weird watching a basketball game and there are no fans, empty stadium. My buddy was telling me, no, it's all right. They put the noise in and stuff, but I haven't done it. So I don't know. I haven't even tried.
Gotcha. Bret, do you watch any of the basketball stuff? Or?
Yeah, I'm a huge NBA and NFL fan. Unfortunately, I'm a Bulls fan, and we're a dumpster fire, so we're terrible. We didn't even get invited to the bubble. That's how bad we are. But I still have been watching. And sorry, I am a Laker hater, so I'm rooting against the Lakers. Sorry, but yeah, all of that. I mean, I think I'm in agreement with you. They should be able to say what they want, but it's also like leave sports alone. Like I feel like they've really dropped the ball, especially the NBA, and I'm concerned about the NFL now for various reasons. But I feel like the NBA specifically has really dropped the ball in an opportunity to unite people. They've done more to promote the division than they have to unite people. And what I mean by that is like, I'm fine with, whatever, put Black Lives Matter on the court, that's fine. You want to put stuff on the jerseys, which they did, okay. But to then strike over the Jacob Blake stuff, I'm like, that almost pushed me over the edge where I don't want to watch it anymore. I remember the day that happened, I was like, well, maybe I'm done with the NBA now, because I just want to watch sports. I want it to be an escape. I even went through this a couple of years ago. I was a huge ESPN fan, and they were getting way too political for me. It seemed like every fourth or fifth segment on these shows that I liked, they somehow brought up the president. I'm like, I don't want to hear about the president. I don't. I want to hear about, James Harden and the Bears, and are the Bears any good? Or, I want to hear about that stuff. I don't want to hear about the political stuff. And so for me, and also I just think the NBA is a bunch of hypocrites, to be honest. I mean, because a year ago, I don't know if you guys were following the whole China thing with the Hong Kong rebellion, and nothing. They didn't say anything. And that's actual human injustice, people being killed, slaughtered, all these terrible things. Didn't say anything because they would have lost billions. And that's coming from somebody, I'm like, okay, if I'm LeBron James and I'm in that place, I would probably hesitate to say something too. Just being honest. I'm like, oh wait, we could lose like $10 billion if I speak against communist China. I'm like, I should probably be smart about this. But my problem is the hypocrisy. It's okay, if you're not going to speak about that, that's fine. Again, I'm like, you can have an opinion, you cannot. I really don't care what LeBron James's opinion is about the president of the United States. I don't care. Everyone can have an opinion. I basically care about his opinion as much as I do as somebody I've never met. Just being honest, I don't care. But my problem is the hypocrisy is to say that, but then take such a strong stance on something like Jacob Blake, where I feel like, okay, it's not as black and white as you're making it, and you're making huge overstatements, and you're actually lying because you're speaking mistruths about what actually happened. And so for me, that's where I'm like, I don't want to hear anything LeBron James has to say about anything anymore because of that hypocrisy. I'm like, if he would have said something about China, even if I disagree, I'm like, cool, but you're being consistent. He's not being consistent. And so that's my problem with that. But all that said, even after they went on strike and everything, I still watched the games last night. I watched the Bucks get destroyed. So it's I just love sports. And I even make this joke, and I say it in jest, but I'm such a diehard Bears fan, Chicago Bears fan, that like if the owner of the Bears came out as like some kind of serial killer, I'd probably still be a Bears fan, just being honest. Like it would take a lot for me to not be a Bears fan anymore. So I'm one of those rare where it's like, I'm going to watch no matter what. But you can tell from the NBA ratings, people are tuning out. They don't want to hear this stuff. The ratings are the lowest they've ever been, which is shocking because everybody's at home with COVID and starving for sports. So I think it's actually worse than just what the ratings are. You would think more people would watch. Even people that are casual basketball fans would be like, oh, it's sports, cool. But anyways, that's my tangent on that. It's the hypocrisy that I can't take.
I think that's interesting because I don't watch any sports. I got the UFC fights a couple of weeks ago. That was the first thing I've ever watched in probably like over a year. I love sports. I just have so much other things going on that I don't watch any of it. But it's funny because I think you guys are pretty close to the same kind of feeling. I don't really care. Kind of what you're saying, Bret, but I just block it out unless during the game they're stopping and doing all this stuff. I mean, I don't care about that stuff. It really wouldn't keep me from watching the game. I think all the talking and stuff is typically on these news outlets and things like that. The hypocrisy, I can understand it. I actually can see why they wouldn't say something about China, kind of what you're talking about with the money. It doesn't bother me as much because I think it's two different issues. And so I can understand them wanting to be quiet and not upset, the purse, your boss, kind of. I think sometimes you have to choose your battles and choose what you speak about, and maybe they feel like this is a situation or a topic that they can have some kind of sway or pull, and maybe the other topic they don't feel like it would do any good. But that's kind of my idea. It doesn't bother. I agree that it is hypocritical. These big words get me sometimes.
Big word.
Yeah. But it doesn't bother me. I understand that. It wouldn't keep me from watching necessarily. But I have a question for you guys. You mentioned kind of the misrepresentation of things that are happening. Do you really think it is, or do you really think like most Americans, they really don't know the actual situation? Or do you think they're really trying to make something that isn't in those situations? What do you think, Bret?
Yeah, I absolutely think that I don't want to say all, but 99% of media right now has to fit in some kind of narrative, whether it's CNN to fit into more of a liberal narrative or Fox News fitting into a conservative narrative. And that's unfortunate. I think I'm with you, Nick. I think it's important to get truth. I think it's important to understand the facts and the truth and then come to conclusions, gather the information, observe the information, and then come to a conclusion. And I think so many times people take facts to try to fit it into the narrative that it is misleading, I think. And unfortunately, we've seen, because of social media, many people get their news from social media. Many people get their information from social media, which, again, I'm a fan of freedom of speech, but I think the public needs to be more educated on what a good source is, right? Like, what is a good, reliable source? Not your friend from Alabama that posted something that they heard somebody else say, right? Like, nothing against Alabama. I just pulled that. It could have been anywhere, Montana, whatever. But you know what I'm saying?
I don't trust anything I hear from Alabama.
Right. Exactly. Especially because I don't like Alabama, the football team. They're too good. But anyways, like, it's just that concept. I think a lot of this is just, I think it all, actually, me saying that out loud, it makes me think about going back to the education system. Do we need to look at the education system? Are we not preparing our high school students to be well-rounded adults, to have common sense and like how to source well? I remember just me going to college. That was really where I started to understand like how to source well, what a reliable source is. Like Wikipedia, anybody can edit that junk. Like, you can't. And I saw even people on social media that maybe I agree with, some friends of mine, posting stuff and using Wikipedia as a source. I'm like, well, now you lost me. That's not a reliable source. And so I think that's part of it. Maybe we need to teach our high school students in the America education system, however you want to explain it, that no, you need to understand like what a reliable source is. Like, I think that could really help resolve some of these issues. So going back to your question, yes, absolutely. I think many people, and I'm probably guilty of it too, when I hear something, I kind of lean one way through my experience and stuff, and that's natural. But I try to gather the information and then make a conclusion. So I think, going back to your question, yes, I do think many things are dishonest to fit a narrative that fits what people want.
So I 100% agree with you on like the big news outlets and stuff like that. What about like LeBron James though?
Well, I even think so. LeBron James specifically, I think this is going to sound. I want to be careful with how I say this, because I feel like certain groups, and it's true on either side. So I don't want to generalize just, you know, the left, but I do feel like LeBron James is being promoted as a spokesperson for the left, meaning he is promoting a lot of that narrative. And I don't know if So I don't know if he is educated or if he is actually just being told this stuff, or it could be from his experience. So I don't want to say like, oh, my experience is better than his. I don't know his experience with all that stuff. So I do feel like with LeBron James, he is, in a sense, being used for the narrative. And I think there's other celebrities that have fallen into that. Yeah. So, like, for example, one person I really like is like Joe Rogan, because he kind of falls in the middle. And like, I feel like I like his process. There's stuff I totally disagree with him on. I think some stuff he's just crazy, but I do like his process of like gathering information and looking at both sides, and he feels pretty even-handed, at least politically. So stuff like that, I'm like, I appreciate that, and I try to implement that in my views and perspectives on things. Yeah. But for right or wrong, I'm probably wrong on a lot of stuff for sure. But
gotcha, definitely. I think I kind of understand your guys' perspectives on it. I just thought it was kind of, it seems like there's so many people upset with the political sizing. What's the word, Jason?
Politicizing?
Yes, of sports. Where to me, I just ignore it. I wouldn't care. I just put it on and whatever. So I was interested to hear from maybe you guys who actually watch it, because I don't watch it. Going back to, let's talk a little bit about the COVID thing.